In the 16th century, sailors believed that birds of paradise were born in the sky and never touched the ground. It was this mysterious legless bird that cartographers permanently placed in the deepest southern starry sky. But the main mystery of this constellation is an eerie ghost star that can suddenly vanish into darkness without a trace. It turned out that this giant regularly erupts dense clouds of cosmic soot that completely hide its light.
Welcome! Today we're going to conduct a rigorous analysis of a constellation that most of humanity throughout all of history has never seen. Its name is Apis, and its story is this fascinating convergence of astronomy, high seas exploration, and a surprisingly persistent biological myth. You see, because it's nestled so deep in the southern sky, it was completely hidden from the ancient astronomers of the northern hemisphere. It was only charted during the Great Age of Discovery. And that very obscurity is a critical part of what makes its story so compelling. So, here's our agenda for this analysis. We'll begin with its astrometric profile, its precise location in the sky. Then, we'll examine the astrophysical curiosities it contains. From there, we'll investigate the history, the cartography and confusion that led to its creation, explore the strange legend that gave it its name, and finally, I'll provide a guide for how to observe it, assuming you're in the correct part of the world.
Okay, let's begin with the fundamentals. First, we need to define exactly where Apis is located on the celestial sphere. Its position, after all, dictates everything else, including the very strict limits on who on Earth can actually observe it.
So Apis is quite a small constellation, covering just over 206 square degrees of the sky. Now, to give you some perspective on that, out of the 88 officially recognized constellations, that ranks it pretty far down the list at number 67. And within that small patch, you're looking at only about 20 stars that you could even hope to see with the naked eye, and that's only on an exceptionally clear dark night.
Because its position so close to the south celestial pole, your latitude on Earth is absolutely critical. To see it fully, to watch it circle the pole without ever setting, you have to be south of 5 degrees north latitude. This means it's effectively invisible to anyone in Europe or the vast majority of North America. For observers in the southern hemisphere, though, you can find it adjacent to the bright southern triangle and Octans, which is the constellation that contains the south celestial pole itself.
All right, now let's zoom in a bit. Even though Apis is faint and unassuming, it's home to some truly remarkable stellar objects. You can think of it as a natural laboratory for studying some pretty bizarre astrophysical phenomena.
The real star of the show in Apis, pun intended, is an object called Apodis. It belongs to an incredibly rare class of stars known as R Coronae Borealis variables. What makes these so unusual is their atmospheric chemistry. They have very little hydrogen, but are absolutely packed with carbon. And this unique composition leads to some very dramatic and, importantly, unpredictable behavior.
So this is the incredible mechanism at work. Normally, Apodis shines with a steady light. But then, without any warning, the carbon in its upper atmosphere cools and condenses. It clumps together, forming a massive opaque cloud of dust, essentially cosmic soot. This soot cloud then physically blocks the star's light from reaching us, causing its apparent brightness to just plummet by a factor of 100. And then, eventually, the star's own stellar wind gradually blows the dust cloud away and its brightness pops right back to normal. It's a fantastic cycle.
Apis also holds a real treat for observers, a beautiful wide double star system called Delta Apodis. It's composed of two giant stars. One is a deep red giant, and the other is a golden-orange giant. The color contrast between them is absolutely stunning, and if you have a good pair of binoculars, you can resolve the two. It's a truly spectacular sight.
A few other objects here are worth mentioning. Alpha Apodis is simply the brightest star in the constellation. Then there's Gamma Apodis, which is interesting because it's an incredibly luminous giant that emits powerful X-rays, a sure sign of intense magnetic activity. And finally, we have IC 4499, a globular cluster way out on the fringes of our galaxy. It's full of a special type of variable star that astronomers use as standard candles to measure vast cosmic distances.
We're now going to pivot from astrophysics to history. You see, Apis is not an ancient constellation passed down from the Greeks or Babylonians. No, it is a direct celestial artifact of the Age of Discovery and the dawn of global cartography.
The story really begins in the late 1590s. Dutch navigators on an expedition to the East Indies were the first to systematically map this uncharted region of the sky. A cartographer named Petrus Plancius then placed their findings on a celestial globe in 1598. But it was the astronomer Johann Bayer who truly formalized it in his famous 1603 star atlas, Uranometria.
and in doing so, he accidentally locked a linguistic error into the permanent record of astronomy.
So here's exactly what happened. Plancius's original name was Paradisvogel Apis Indica, which translates to bird of paradise, Indian bee. It's a bit strange, but somewhere along the line, the Latin word for bee, apis, got confused with the similar-sounding Latin word for bird, avis. Bayer then shortened the whole thing to apis. And the beautiful irony here is that apis comes from a Greek root word that means footless, a name that, as we're about to see, was a perfect accident.
This name, the footless one, was no mere accident. It connects directly to a powerful biological misconception that was widespread in the 16th century, a legend that gave this constellation its profound mythological identity. So the whole myth began with a very practical tradition. To prepare the skins of birds of paradise for trade, hunters in New Guinea would remove their legs and wings. When these bizarre, beautiful, and legless specimens first arrived in Europe, they sparked an incredibly wild and imaginative legend. Europeans, looking at these specimens with no legs, constructed this whole elaborate story. They came to believe that these birds were literally visitors from paradise, that they spent their entire lives airborne, never touching what they considered the sinful earth. It was said they ate heavenly dew and even laid their eggs on the male's back while in flight. They only ever fell to the ground at the moment of their death. They were seen as these pure, celestial beings, completely untainted by the terrestrial world.
And this is where it all comes together so brilliantly. Plancius, who was deeply impressed by this legend of the footless celestial bird, deliberately placed the constellation near the south celestial pole. Why? Because in that position, for any observer in the southern hemisphere, the constellation becomes circumpolar. It circles the pole eternally, never setting, never landing below the horizon. The myth was literally immortalized in the stars.
So, to conclude our analysis, let's go over a practical guide for actually locating Apis in the night sky. And then we'll summarize its really unique legacy as this meeting point for science, history, and myth.
If you want to locate Apus, you have to start with an anchor. First, find the bright, unmistakable pattern of Triangulum Australe, the southern triangle. From there, you want to scan the region of sky between the triangle and the south celestial pole. The faint stars of Apus form a pattern that's often described as a Y shape, or maybe an arrowhead, pointing towards the pole.
So, to summarize, Apis really is significant on so many levels. For astrophysicists, it's a natural laboratory. For historians, it's a direct artifact from the Age of Discovery. For mythologists, it's the fossil of a 16th-century biological error. And symbolically, it represents this amazing convergence of science, human imagination, and the wonders of exploration.
And this really leaves us with a final thought to consider. Apodis is a powerful reminder that the night sky is not just a collection of distant physical objects. It is also a canvas, a mirror, upon which we have projected our history, our errors, and our greatest sense of wonder. And the critical question that leaves us with is this: how many other objects up there are not just points of light, but are in fact archives of the human experience?
Thank you, friends. Strive for understanding and become wiser. See you soon.